So in this video we're going to show you how to replace the rear strut on a 2002 Mitsubishi Lancer. We're going to take the tire off. You can set the tire down and sit on it if you want. Alright, so what we've got is we've got the bolt that holds the strut into place on the bar here, on our bar that attaches then to where the tire gets held on with this nut right here. These are 17 millimeter nuts, so what you're going to want to do is take a 17 millimeter monkey wrench and you're going to put that on the back side, and then you're going to take your 17 millimeter deep socket impact gun. And what I found is that using a hammer to hammer against this to send that bolt out is the best way that I know how to do this. So that's how I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm not going to record that because I've got earplugs in right now and it's going to be super loud. You should also put the jack underneath the brace where the tire's going and just put a little bit of pressure, just the slightest bit, and then you should put it up underneath the strut, pump it up a little bit so you can hammer out that bolt a little bit better, and that way the strut won't try to sink down as you get that bolt out. That'll be super helpful for you. Now that we do have the nuts out, make sure that you get rid of all of the rust and corrosion. Go into the trunk, you can pull the carpet away, and then there are three little interior things we need to remove. One right here, down here, and another one right up in here. So what I do is I take a nail remover like this one here and just get underneath it and pull it and pop it out. The first three that I've removed will allow you to get to the strut, but if you want a little bit easier access, you can remove this whole panel by taking off an interior twisting pin right here and another one right here. Then this whole panel will pull off. The two bolts up here that are holding the strut in on the top rear of your car, we're going to be using a 14 millimeter deep socket with the breaker bar, and they're just going to come off like butter. Now that we've got those two bolts off that are holding it up here, we can go ahead and release the jack, and then you can just pull the bar down. Might need to push it down with a little bit more force. So might have to jostle your strut loose a little bit, and there we go. There's the old strut. Now we're ready to go ahead and attach our coil or spring compressors. Attach these to the spring and then push these pins through, and that will just make sure that it's nice and snug on there. Now that I've got these tightened up by hand and they're going to stay on our spring, I'm going to go ahead, take our 19 millimeter deep socket on our impact gun and just crank these up. And now we've got these tightened, and what you do is you just compress them a little bit on this side, then a little bit on that side to even it out, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and you keep going back and forth until you get your spring down where it's not putting so much pressure on the top. I have found that an impact gun will break this strut nut loose on the top. If you've only got a breaker bar or something else like that, you really may struggle to get the strut nut off, or not be able to get it off at all, because what you're going to find is that that is attached to this very smooth silver shaft in here, and that's going to turn at the same time this does, and you cannot get in there to grip it well enough. So you really need a lot of power in order to get this thing off. Once again, this is a 17 millimeter deep socket, and with an impact gun, this thing just flies right off. As a precaution, make sure that you never aim this towards yourself or anyone else when you're taking this off, just in case this spring launches it a little bit. Now we're going to take these off and make sure that you keep everything in the exact same shape that you took it out as, because it's going to need to go back in the exact same order. We're going to remove the boot on this one because we are keeping the boot with our new strut. Here's our new OEM spec strut, and we're going to prepare it by taking this rubber mounting off of this as well. You're going to notice that there is a ridge right there. You are going to want to line that ridge up with the ridge down here, just like that. You're going to want to put your boot back on. Make sure it gets situated on there, nice and tight. And then take your spring and slide it down on there, and make sure that your spring goes right up against this metal ridge that we just lined up in there. And then you're ready to put the top assembly back on. So these OEM spec struts also come with a nut for the very top. So now we put our assembly back together. And you're going to find in here that there is a ridge right there, and you're going to want to line that up with the end of your spring once again, just like on the bottom. And things can kind of adjust as you're cranking that new strut on top. So just make sure that everything stays lined up just like it was originally. Okay, I'm going to get the regular 19mm socket going, and we're going to loosen these up the same way that we tightened them up. This top strut nut is going to be tightened to 65 foot-pounds. We're going to do that once it's on the vehicle, and these bolts that are going to hold this to the wheel wells in the trunk, these are going to be torqued at 33 foot-pounds. Alright. Alright, once you've got the spring compressors taken off, go ahead and check to make sure that the springs are butted up once again into the position that they should be. And if they're not, if they're way off, you may want to recompress the springs and try to get it back into alignment. Otherwise, just try to wiggle the thing back into place. Sometimes these can be just as fussy to go back in as they were to take off. Shouldn't be too much of a problem for us. Emphasis on shouldn't be. There are a lot of things that shouldn't be an issue when you're doing car work, but they become issues. We have the 14mm bolts up on the top of the strut tightened up a little bit so that it doesn't sag or fall at all. While we're working down here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take one of our 19mm bolts, and I'm going to go ahead and pop it in there. Remember that they need to pop in, they need to go in just the same as you took them out. So go ahead and take your bolt and put it in from this side. First, I'm going to place the bolt that goes into the arm brace and strut, and you might need a hammer to pound that back in, but let's get it in there. Now we're ready to put the nuts back on, now that we've hammered these bolts back in place. And you may want to take a wrench hold on to the bolt, and then the struts are a more difficult thing that you're going to be doing in terms of car repair for your car, but it is possible, and I hope I've told you all of the tools that you've needed to do it. Now you know how to do the front and the back. I'm going to include all the tools that you're going to need in the description below, specifically for the 2002 Mitsubishi Lancer, which will be similar to the other Lancer models, as well as many of Mitsubishi's other cars. And feel free to leave any questions or comments. Finally, we're going to torque these knuckle bolts to 65 foot-pounds. We're going to torque the strut nut to 65 foot-pounds, and then we're going to go ahead and get the two upper mount bolts. We're going to torque those to 33 foot-pounds. And that's it. Thanks for watching.